Of course, you know these people are all the great, great creators of what you see on screen for the Mandalorian. So first off, we have the visual effects supervisor, Grady Cofer. And then hair department head, Maria Sandoval. And makeup department head, Christina Waltz. Costume designer, Shawna Trpcic. Composer, Shirley. And production designer, Chiang. Great, great group, and I'm your moderator for the day, Carl Weathers. So, hello! Okay, so the only reason you're really here is because you all love the Mandalorian, right? There you go. But you know, without this group of people, we'd be in maybe trouble because we wouldn't have a show. I mean, this group are some of the best artists, craftspeople, designers, professionals in the industry, and we were just fortunate enough that we got a chance, those of us in front of the camera and some of us behind the camera, to work with them. So I'm just honored to be here. And I'm going to jump right in and ask the first question to Mr. Chiang. Doug, the designs for Chapter 23, Episode 7, which you just watched, right, for Season 3 were amazing. Would you all agree with that? Were they amazing? Right. So, could you please share some of the challenges that you were faced with creating those designs, those beautiful sets that we all saw?
Oh, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me here today. I mean, as you know, I love Star Wars, and I've been designing Star Wars for over 25 years. And I mean, Chapter 23, actually, it was really fun because it was a culmination of all of the designs that we've been developing for Star Wars. You know, when you consider the prequels all the way to the original trilogy to The Mandalorian. And what's terrific about it is, I mean, I just enjoy this universe. I just love playing in this universe. And where Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni and Rick, where they took it was they were really trying to combine now all those sort of design languages. And so what we're doing with The Mandalorian and why it's so fun is that we're actually merging the designs from the prequel era all the way to the original trilogy. And this was something that George has always intended. And we're actually finally starting to realize it. And the challenge really was, well, how do you sustain that? How do you, sort of live up to the fan expectations? Because, Star Wars has a lot of different distinct fan bases, and they all love very distinct parts of it. And we're trying to, sort of unite all those designs and all those fan bases. And the crazy thing is, I mean, Star Wars design, when you think about it, has its own internal logic. And this is a logic that is not sort of necessarily scientific, but it makes sense for Star Wars and makes sense for George. For example, it's like, as you know, all designs are based in sort of 1970s and early 80s design, where you have old CRT monitors and you have vector graphics and you have sort of computer keyboards with cables. But then you also have lightsabers and spaceships and droids, And so we kind of take that same approach for the designs itself. So it has an internal logic which makes it distinctly Star Wars. And it's crazy. It doesn't make sense. It's like crazy things like, we don't have zippers or buttons in Star Wars. And the reason we do that is because it creates a very unique universe in the sense that it's very familiar, but it feels different.
Now you know. So I have a question for Shawna, who anybody in front of the camera has had to deal with. Her artistry and her detail is phenomenal. So when you go in for a wardrobe fitting, as I did for 3 different seasons, and see what she builds, yow, but the background characters are instrumental in that world that we're building, and the setting and the atmosphere that we've visited so many different planets this season, right? So can you tell us a little bit about the process for establishing all these looks?
Yeah, absolutely. So I work very closely with Doug Chiang and Andrew Jones, sort of vibing off of what they've sort of established is going to be the production design, the atmosphere that I'm going to be going into, the bars that we're going to be going into, the huge balls that we're going to be going into. And then sort of like for Plaisir 15, this is a community of people who've all come that are all of means. So they're going to be a little more high class, a little more tailored, some beautiful fabrics. But then we go to places like Navarro, which is more of a, they're miners. They have to dig in the lava. They have to, carve out. It's more frontiersmen, and so their fabrics are more earthy, and their colors are more drawn from earth and dyed from plants they might find on Navarro. And even Greef Karga's jewel is based on a lava, a green diamond that you pull out of lava. That's an actual jewel that I wanted to incorporate into his costume to create a reality, create the story behind it. And so as we visit these different planets, and I also work very closely with hair and makeup because, especially with like Lizzo and different characters like this, where we have to incorporate hats and bands, and it's a real collaboration, props, stunts, everybody, yeah.
And beautifully done, really beautifully done. So, Christina, your team was responsible for prosthetic makeup, character makeups, mask building. That's needless to say, a tall order when you look at the Mandalorian world, galaxy, wherever we are, with all those different characters. So in Star Wars, where there are all these types of characters and creatures, can you tell us a little bit about your workflow?
Well, it really starts with the timeline. The AD team really gives us a great schedule early on to kind of plan from. And once I kind of map out what we need, I jump right into the prosthetic world. That's usually our most challenging builds. Those are the characters that take the longest for us in our department. And also work a lot with Doug as we kind of work through the sculptures and the nuances of the characters, and just making sure we're kind of creating this like real life looking character that will be wearing a makeup, and someone will be performing in that. And what's great about it is we can, from there, we have a great workshop. We have a prosthetic shop on site. So I'm able to hire the artisans that I need to help me really build what we need for the look. From there, I kind of go down the list, and once I have the prosthetic characters underway, I jump right into the other characters in the show, and that's where it's, again, a lot of collaboration with hair and costumes. When I first came onto the show, it was great. I went to Shawna's costume house and just saw the world and her fabrics and her textures of each one, and it really helped familiarize myself with like what each era, what they were wearing, and it kind of helped me think about what I wanted to do with it. And Maria has this great like wig room with her space hairstyles, or space hairs, she's called it. And it's really, for me, it's real inspiring, the collaboration between all the departments.
Well, having sat in Maria's chair many times now over the 3 seasons, the work that Maria does is just phenomenal, and also just for any actor sitting in the chair with people who are doing makeup and wigs and all that sort of stuff. My God, man, that's the beginning of your day. So if they ain't on point, it can really get you like in a foul mood, I'll tell you. And Maria is on point, no question. So the story took us from the dusty streets of Navarro to the glamorous city life of Coruscant, which we all love, and then the depths of Mandalore. That's a wide variety of characters, Maria, to style. So how did you prepare for that? And did you have any favorites besides Greef Karga this season? Just asking for a friend.
Always my favorite. By the time the actors get to my chair, a lot of the work's already been done. It's been started by Doug, it's been taken on by Shawna, and collaborated with Christina. And so I'm sort of the last point of contact for all of that. And I try to treat the hair as sort of another texture, another textile. In the world. So, depending on the planets, like the hair from Navarro is more grittier and dull, and then the hair at Coruscant is more coiffed and perfect. I have an extensive library of books that I pull from, both books on Star Wars and also books on indigenous cultures and some things from the 20s, Erte, different people that inspire me in that aspect. And then also, discussing it with the actors and seeing how they feel and what they want to do within the realm of the parameters needed for the show. My favorite thing this season was Coruscant, though, because I've been wanting to go there since I saw the first 3 episodes.
I love it. You want to be uptown. You don't want to be in Navarro where it's downtown. Okay. But Navarro is moving on up. Have you noticed? So Grady, each season of The Mandalorian seems to get, it doesn't seem to get, it does get bigger and bigger in terms of the visual effects and the scope that's involved. Can you tell us the primary challenges for you that were, there this season with ILM, Industrial Light and Magic?
Yeah, definitely. This was my first season working on The Mandalorian, and I should say that I feel very lucky to have kind of inherited this role on a show that I feel like does so many things right. The kind of philosophy behind the visual effects of The Mandalorian, and a lot of this comes from John and his experience and his instincts, but it's to aim for kind of the highest quality, the highest level of computer graphics and animation, but then balance that with more kind of practical techniques, like old school traditional techniques, like practical creature effects, animatronics, model miniatures, all of those kind of old school tricks that we grew up with that inject a bit of that analog into our kind of digital world, and kind of give the effects and the visuals that kind of lived-in look, that kind of handcrafted look that I think is really kind of true to the Star Wars universe. But as you say, this season got huge, right? The scope of it just got really big. The ideas and themes that John was exploring, redemption and rebirth. We saw, you guys just watched it, the reunification of the many factions of the Mandalorians, embarking to kind of take back their home world. These are big, big stories. And the visuals and the world building needed to rise to that level of spectacle. And the challenge, and by the way, this is the challenge that I love, but the challenge is to do exactly that, to raise the visuals to a new level, but to maintain that grounded sense, that those connections to the real world that make things feel real and authentic.
Wow. Well done, my friend. Well done. And Joe Shirley, it says here that you've done a wonderful job. Yes, you did, okay? You did a wonderful job interweaving the old and the new themes this season. So, without a score that lives up to what Joe did, we just have a bunch of guys running around with lightsabers chopping each other up, but beautiful job. Tell us about what the process was like for you.
It was really a joy to work on this show, and especially just being here on this panel with all these amazing artists. I'm very grateful and feel very privileged to be speaking with you today. This is a show that I was working under Ludwig for the first 2 seasons, and then here is season 3. We worked on the Book of Boba Fett together, and that was a lot of fun, and I feel very thankful to work here on season 3, but it's like having that sort of history along with Ludwig, but then also just like being a true fan of Star Wars myself, like everyone up here, I just have like a history with loving the music so much, that's truly what brought me into Star Wars, is loving John Williams' music, and it was just such a joy to work along with Ludwig for the first 2 seasons. And, I just know this, I know his material and that material very intimately. And then to have the chance to sort of add my own take on that for this season was like, just sign me up where, throw me in, coach, I was very pumped to get into it in that sort of way. And the challenge for this season was really like, how do I put my own stamp on it? because we're dealing with many of the same characters, but some of these characters, the scope and the scale of the environments and the storylines and the arcs are all expanded into such a huge array of. I mean, the story has just gotten so big, and one character in particular, Bo-Katan, really this season kind of like follows her journey, and I was really excited to sort of get, I guess, under the hood on musically helping push her story along through the season, because we really are following her. So one thing I love to do as a composer is just sort of build a bit of a puzzle out of weaving themes in and out, adding my own themes, quoting previous themes, making them feel new. It's like, the end of this episode that we all watched today, the Praetorian Guards, is some new material. Bo-Katan's theme feels new in a certain way, and it's like weaving these themes together. Even Navarro, Greef Karga, it's like the Navarro has its own sort of flavor. Each Mandalorian cult or group sort of has their own flavor of sounds and things. So it's like building this tapestry out of like things we're familiar with, and then also adding something new to it. And I just love building that sort of tapestry musically.
Well done, my friend. I do want to make one correction. Nobody in The Mandalorian is a cult. We are a covert.
Okay? True.
Just want to make that clear. Because I know Jon Favreau is going to be listening to this if he isn't watching it.
Thank you for the correction. Yes, you are correct.
Hey, a little bit of humor from Greef Karga always works, okay? We don't have much time, obviously, as we started out, but one question I had as a fan of all your work, and obviously we have all watched the show now, and we all have our individual likes and maybe dislikes, or the things we really spark to. Each one of you, could you just give us a brief, what was your favorite episode, or what was your favorite scene or sequence that was put together when you bring all of these talents together and you see it on screen? Putting you on the spot. Doug, I'm not gonna go with you first. I'm gonna go down the end because I see your eyes and Doug's going, oh boy. Anybody, chime in, please.
I could jump in. I'll talk about, there's one sequence, and it comes in the final episode, right? This is the final battle. And it's that final battle has a lot of kind of parallels to Return of the Jedi, right? Which has, it exists kind of on different scales. You have this space battle going on with the light cruiser being attacked by TIE interceptors and TIE bombers. Then beneath that, you have the jet-packing Mandos fighting the jet-packing Super Command. This amazing kind of fight in that big cavern in the Imperial base. And then at the smallest scale, you have Mando, Bo, and even little Grogu kind of fighting Moff Gideon, right? So all of these things are kind of happening concurrently. And I love that kind of storytelling, kind of bouncing back and forth between those. But of all of those, the jet-packing battle, of all of the set pieces this season, that's the one that kind of kept me up at night. And not because Island wasn't up to the task, of course they were, but for a long time, we didn't really know what that was gonna be. We just didn't know. And one of the things I've learned from John this year is that when you're working on a story beat or a set piece or whatever, know your genre, right? Know your references. And when we were doing these brainstorm sessions with John and Filoni and Rick, we started talking about that jetpacking battle in terms of Gladiator, in terms of Braveheart. And we even cut together this little animatic where we cut in the shot from Braveheart where, the two armies, collide and kind of crush into each other. And then all of those nice frenetic close-ups of hand-to-hand fighting from Gladiator. And once we watched that animatic, we knew we had kind of found our genre, and it really opened up the box for us on that sequence. And the rest was just a lot of really hard work by a lot of very talented artists.
I'll go next. For me, I think the things that stand out to me the most aren't always necessarily involving my department, but it's it's when I have fan moments all the time at work. Like, I'll just sit there and go, oh my God, so can we realize what we're doing here right now? Like, this is happening. And this season, for me, it was also being in Coruscant again, and the fact that we were at the Opera House, and this is the Opera House where, you know, Palpatine was whispering in Anakin's ear, and like, you know, we're in this exact same space, and we're walking up the stairs and everything. And then just trusting that I can do things and think out of the box and use crafts and sewing and anything I can think of to try to elevate these hairstyles, not necessarily physically elevate them, but elevate them and make them blend in, you know, in layers and textures, the way that the outfits do and that the makeup does. And being able to create these aristocrats in Coruscant that were reminiscent of, you know, what I had seen in these movies that meant so much to me was just a joy.
I really enjoyed building our two major prosthetic characters this season. Vane was my first Star Wars alien, so he will always hold a special place in my heart. And he was well acted by Marty. I mean, it just was a lot. That character really came to life. But the female Quarren was a very memorable experience for me, just because there was so much technical things to figure out as well. After we to do a female Quarren, we didn't have something like that yet done, and so it was fun to just find her look. And I spent a lot of time with Doug with that character, and then trying to figure out how, you know, visual effects could come in and work with the tentacles. So we created a way to magnetize them on and off, so that we would have options where they'd have the tentacle to work with, or we could take off the tentacle. And so working with all these little techniques and coloring it, you know, the character needed to go underwater for a period of time and then come out of water. We needed to do 2 different paint jobs, because our first test underwater, it almost looked like there was nothing painted. So it was fun to really figure out those techniques and test it and play with it. And like, you know, we kind of colored it once we saw where Shawna was going with the green tones and the costume. It kind of, we played with the coloration, and I just loved all the collaboration. And that character was a lot of fun, just to see her go underwater, come out, and just see it come to life on screen was a lot of fun for me.
Well, I have to say, working with Ahmed Best was a moment that I will never forget and I will cherish forever. Bringing his Jedi robes to life, during the fitting, I saw his tattoos that he had gotten from the Adinkra people in Africa, and I asked him why he had those tattoos, and he told me his story of redemption after a long period of a very hard time in his life, dealing with the bullying after Jar Jar Binks. And I was able to research those symbols and embroider them into his Jedi robes. And I talked closely with Doug and John to get permission, because we've never seen embroidery on a Jedi robe. And so I wanted to make sure I'm staying very loyal to George Lucas's original vision for the Jedis. And I had their blessing, and we started experimenting. I showed Doug and John, and it was a hit. And when we presented the robes to Ahmed, he began to cry.
For me, it was my favorite moment of the season was maybe the last 15 minutes of the last episode that wraps up season 3. It was just a really special moment musically to be able to contribute to this really beautiful and poetic wrap up to, I guess, the arc of the first 3 seasons, you know. And even in our spotting session, John, like, very cleverly and creatively, you know, obviously it's like Din adopts Grogu officially, and that's like a very special moment, and you know, I really wanted to help contribute to that emotionally, musically, and that was a really touching scene. But the very last shots of the season, you know, John, you know, just brilliantly said, you know, it's like after all of that, after Moff Gideon, you know, I don't want to take words out of John's mouth, but like after that huge battle in this, you know, epic scale, you know, war between everybody, like what do you get? you get to hang out with your kid. And it was just like so moving the way he pitched me, and I'm sure he pitched everyone here on this panel in the same sort of way. Like that's how the story concludes. And so musically, I wanted to use, basically like choose my themes wisely and sort of help support that sort of emotional just resolution to the arc of the first 3 seasons together. So there are moments throughout that big run where it's, I quote a Mythosaur theme, or I reference Grogu's theme, or I've used Din Djarin's The Mandalorian theme to really tie things together, or Bo's theme to like show her taking the throne as head of state on Mandalore. So like finding a way to thread those together in a touching way was something that I really, really wanted to get right. And thankfully, after a couple tries, I got John was a fan of what I had contributed, and we ended up recording that with a really big orchestra, and it was just a very moving day. And I'd lived with these characters for a long time, and it was just very touching to hear these instrumentalists, these musicians who also feel that and know that sort of musical history that we're dealing with. They really put themselves into the music and like really showed their humanity, I think. And it was just a really special moment for me as a composer.
And for me, it's really hard to say because I love the spectacle of Star Wars. I like the grandeur and all this sort of the amazing sort of giant set pieces of like the Trinitar attack on the landscape. But honestly, my favorite thing of the whole season was actually the smallest. It's Grogu and IG-12 and the Anzellans. And the reason I like them is because, to me, that really speaks to the fun and charm of what appeals to me of Star Wars. Because you can have all this grand world building, but I love these small little character moments. And what was terrific about that is obviously, Baby Grogu is terrific. And our challenge this year was to give him something really fun, to give him sort of a mech suit. And it was the perfect opportunity to bring back IG-11. We loved IG-11. I was kind of disappointed to see him blow up in season 1. And Jon Favreau came up with this brilliant idea of like, let's resurrect him and turn him into a mech suit for Baby Grogu. And it was just so fun because, the idea it made me smile hearing that. And then the fact that, we can actually put it all together to make it work and then invite the Anzellans into this world. So you have 2 of the smallest characters, creating this sort of really fun, memorable character in IG-12. And the great thing is that, in Star Wars, we like to mix all kinds of different techniques. And here we had a wonderful opportunity to bring in old school puppetry, with minimal CG enhancements. And I love that idea that, even in this modern age of, where you can create anything that you can, basically dream of, we're going old school. And the charm of that, to embrace that, to sort of really adhere to sort of that old school, Yoda, look, was really just fantastic. And even like, the Anzellan workshop, the fact that we made it small, so you had to crawl in there, it was like a giant dollhouse, it was just so fun to design. And for me, it just speaks to the heart of Star Wars. It's just fun.
Well, unfortunately, it's time for us to wrap it up, but I just want to, at the end of this, we've mentioned the names Jon Favreau, we've mentioned Dave Filoni, and of course, Rick Famuyiwa, who is an executive producer, has directed episodes on the show. We have such an amazing family of people that we all get to work with. And I got to tell you, for me, with now 50 years in the entertainment industry as a professional, this group, hands down, is one of the best, most talented, most decent, nicest people I have ever worked with. So kudos to them all. And thank you to Disney Plus, and Kathleen, and Bob Iger, and that whole group that keeps us going. So thank you all for coming.